Realty has two convenient locations to better serve you. In Uniontown area, 724-437-7100, or in Connellsville area, 724-628-7200, and speak with one of our real estate professionals. Visit our website, caldwellbanker.com. We have been proudly serving Western Pennsylvania area for over 30 years and look forward to helping you with all of your real estate needs. Broker Paul Borch Jr.
And it's 11:26 on this Monday. Time for attorney Joe Fieschko with an office in Uniontown on East Main Street, specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security disability. Call 724-439-8300 or 800-242-2412. And we say good morning to attorney Fieschko. Joe, how are you today?
Well, good morning, TJ. I'm great. And how are you?
Doing well. And you have a special guest here with you today.
I certainly do. And her name is Erica Dowd, and she's the best looking of all the ones that I've dragged in here from the Quattrini Law Group.
That's not setting the bar high.
Yeah, we began at the bottom of the barrel with Vince, and he talked to me about workers' comp. And then Jeff Monzo talked to me about personal injury cases. If you noticed, they do the same thing I do, and I've became part of their law firm on June 1st. And then Teresa Rurko talked to me about Social Security, Disability, and SSI. And Erica also does Social Security, Disability, and SSI. But one of the things that she does is something I know very little about, and honestly, I don't know if there's another law firm that does veterans benefits.
So yeah, I guess I'm the first one coming on introducing something that you don't actually do. But
yes,
I do veterans disability benefits for our law firm. And while that sounds like kind of a limited area, that's actually a pretty broad area in terms of veterans benefits, because almost every kind of veterans benefit can be based on what your disability rating is. But what veterans disability means is it is the benefit that you're eligible for from the VA when you retire or are discharged from a military career but have suffered an injury or an illness that was caused by your service. You're now eligible for a payment from the VA to compensate you for that injury or that illness and its lasting effects.
Now, this is all service related. I know that any veteran is entitled to get medical services through the VA hospitals and that other medical care. And there's a place right here down in Uniontown that has that. And then oftentimes guys get taken up to Pittsburgh in vans. But this is different. This is service related.
This is service related, and even your medical care with the VA, it depends on your contract when you enter the military, what type of healthcare services you're going to be eligible for. But how you get your care later, how you're prioritized in the VA's healthcare system, can be determined by what your disability rating is. The veterans who are the most disabled, who have the most severe injuries, get priority care over the veterans who are less injured. But those injuries have to be caused by some aspect of your service. It can be the obvious ones. It can be a veteran who very unfortunately is involved in an IED blast or who's shot during service, but it can be the less obvious ones. It can be a firefighter on a naval vessel who's exposed to firefighting chemicals and suffers a lung injury because of it.
Okay, so when you're talking about levels of care at the VA system, so let's say I'm just a private in the Army and I didn't see combat. I was in for, the minimum, I guess, 2 years, got an honorable discharge, and I'm healthy. So are you saying that that person might not be eligible for all of the medical benefits at the VA hospital?
So a veteran who enlisted more recently under, say, the 2000s under the GI Bill, they're going to be eligible for VA medical benefits.
Okay.
But a lot of the veterans who enlisted in the 1980s and earlier do not automatically get VA benefits. Where the disability rating comes in, if you're not eligible at all, the VA disability rating makes you eligible. If you are eligible, a low disability rating gets you in the door. A high disability rating gives you priority care. So let's say the orthopedist has 2 appointments available, but they're 2 months apart. The veteran with the higher disability rating is going to get the first appointment, where the veteran with the lower disability rating will get the second later on. The rating system in the VA it was determined by Congress. It is the severity of your injury, as Congress estimates it. As we know, most of Congress are not doctors, so their estimations weren't amazing. But in general, the idea is if you have an injury that's going to very mildly interfere with the rest of your life, you get a low rating of something like 10%. But it goes up in 10% increments up to 100%, which is kind of supposed to replace your income. That's supposed to be equivalent to this person can't work, so we're giving them enough to take care of themselves for the rest of their lives. It is a monthly payment.
Yeah. So my experience as well, a lot of my clients are veterans, and some of them were complaining that they are having trouble seeing doctors quickly, or they're complaining about the care. And if I can be frank with you, in the 70s or 80s, when I used to go to the VA hospitals, they were not very nice places.
No.
Now they're beautiful.
And it's more recent that the VA locally partnered with UPMC. They share UPMC's doctors, they share UPMC's nurses. So their standard of care went from what just the VA could afford to what UPMC can afford, which is dramatically different from what the U.S. government was subsidizing.
Now, let's say I'm a veteran and I'm healthy, but I do have the VA benefits to go to the hospitals there, and I break my leg. Can I go there to get treated for a broken leg?
Yes, you absolutely can. If you are fully covered, if you're a 100% disabled veteran, or your original contract with the VA gave you full access to their medical benefits, you can get that completely treated. If you are a veteran but not eligible for full healthcare benefits, you can still get that treated there, but you'll have a copay at the end.
Oh, okay. So it's not a perfectly free system, is what you're telling me.
Sometimes it's not.
Okay.
It should be. In most cases, most veterans qualify for free healthcare from the VA, but there are a couple of situations where you can have copays.
I will tell you a little funny story about my dad. He was in World War II. He was in the 11th Armored Division, and he was over there forever. But anyway, when he was in his 80s, and I think it was, about 1990s maybe, so he goes into the VA, because that's where he always went. And he wants to get steel arches for his shoes because he had flat feet. So they said, we can't give them to you. They said, but apply for disability benefits and you'll probably get it, and then we can give you the steel arches. So I did that, and he's awarded 10% benefits because he was marching in Europe 40 or 50 or 60 years before that and said, you got flat feet from that, which honestly was not true. And then he got like $18 a month for the rest of his life also, which he didn't care about. But so tell me about those procedures. You feel you've got a disability related to your service, and how do you begin it? Who do you go to? What's your role?
So that brings up an interesting point, too, because it's disabilities that are directly caused by your service, but it can also be disabilities that are worsened by your service. So no, the military probably didn't originally cause your flat feet, but I can promise you that marching on it for a year or two did not make it any better. The procedure for actually telling them that, you have to file with the VA. You come in, you send them in a form which pretty much says, this is who I am, this is my personal information, this is when and where I served, this is the injury or injuries that I have, which were caused or worsened by that time in the service. Normally, you don't need an attorney to do that initial filing. The VA does not want the attorneys doing the initial filing. Most of us attorneys don't want to do the initial filing, because if the VA is going to give you your money for it right off, you don't need us. Don't get us involved.
Why? Oh, and that gets to the attorney's fee. So how are attorneys involved, and how do you charge?
So when you apply, let's say either the VA gives you a terrible rating that you think doesn't compensate you for what happened, or you get denied. They say, no, that's not our fault. We didn't cause this. You have the right to appeal that. You have the right to tell the VA, you got that wrong. Here's some new evidence, or I think this needs to go to somebody who has more experience within the VA to figure this out. When you do that appeal, either of your rating or of a denial, that's when you can get an attorney involved. And what the attorneys do, so let's say you have somebody who applied on January 1st for their benefits, they get denied in April, they file the appeal gets decided in July, and you get back pay, but all the way back to January for an increased rating for your back. The VA will hold a percentage of that back pay from January till July to pay for the attorney's services. There are no fees moving forward after that. It's just out of that big chunk of back pay that you wouldn't have gotten if not for the attorney, that they'll hold a percentage to pay for the attorney. The percentage can vary depending on the complexity of it, normally between 20 and 33%.
So it's very similar to Social Security Disability or SSI applications. The fee is a kind of a modest percentage of the back benefits only.
Yes, and it's only of the change in your benefits as well. So if you're already receiving benefits and you get an increase, it's not from your total benefits for those 6-7 months. It's only from the increase in it.
Now, I had another client who said that years and years ago, he had tried to get disability. He was turned down. He just forgot about it for 10, 15, 20 years. And then he tried again. And I think it was, I've seen this along two lines. First of all, PTSD, which, as everybody knows, wasn't very well recognized, and almost everybody from World War II came home from it with it, if you ever met one of those guys. But now it's well recognized. And also
Thankfully.
the various cancers.
Yes.
So he applied again, and this was years later, and he gets it. He gets, I think it was 100%. So this is a moving target, it sounds like.
Whenever Congress updates the laws, whenever the VA updates their internal laws, which is often, it changes what the requirements are for you to get disabilities. So yes, it's absolutely a changing target. They've gotten better about trainings. They've gotten better about recognizing chemical exposures and things that happen during service. They have gotten much, much better about PTSD and mental health conditions. There's still complexities to applying for mental health conditions. The rating system for it is still weird compared to every other rating, but it is a lot easier to get than it used to be.
So one of the other items that I was surprised about, oh, and by the way, these benefits can be pretty large. I think for 100%, it's over $4,000 a month.
It ranges. There are modifiers for it as well, but at 10%, it starts at as low as $157 a month. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the current rate for that, where 100% can get you up to $4,000 a month. But if you're 100% with a wife and 2 kids, it can be closer to $4,500 a month. Then there are modifiers for the severity of the condition. If it's going to require you to have constant care or an in-home caregiver, that can increase your benefits dramatically. So there are other modifying factors beyond just the main percentage.
So the one other client that I was thinking of that surprised me.
And those are tax-free benefits. I do want to make sure we mention that as well.
I didn't know that. So, and also, as I understand it, you can work.
Yes.
Even though you're 100% disabled, according to the VA, you can drive a bread truck and say, I'm driving a bread truck. And they say, we don't care.
There are 2 ways to get 100%. You have a condition that is severe enough that just based on the VA's laws, it equals 100%. If that happens, you can work, you can win the lottery, you can have all of the passive or active income that you want to. The other way is your conditions don't equal 100%, but they prevent you from working. If they prevent you from working, you can get 100% based on that, but it's conditioned on your income. So if you ever do start to have income, then you cannot get that kind of 100%. That's called unemployability.
I'm you got me confused.
Oh, no, absolutely.
So, and I have clients that get the 4,000 or whatever it is, and they are working, and that's clean. But you're saying that some people get a different kind of disability that if they work, they'll lose their disability. What are you
Yes.
saying here?
So there are two separate ways to qualify for 100% level payments from the
Okay.
VA. It's the same difference as SSDI and SSI in Social Security, except unlike Social Security, these payment amounts are the same. With the VA, you can either be 100% disabled, excuse me, because of the severity of your back injury combined with your leg injury and your PTSD, or let's say you can be 80% disabled under their regulations because of your back and your PTSD. It doesn't meet the listed requirements for the level of symptoms to get the 100% on its own, but you were trained as a bricklayer and now you can't go back to doing that because of your back. So the VA is going to look at it and they're going to say, well, it's not 100% naturally, but because it keeps you from working, you should get paid 100%.
Okay, so this is like a person that is officially 80%, but he gets 100% because he or she can't work.
That's exactly it.
All right. So what I wanted to raise was another client I had, and she's a bankruptcy client, and she's severely disabled. She was never in the military. She's in a wheelchair with spina bifida. And when we filed bankruptcy, she's getting this check for $4,000 a month from the government for VA. I said, how are you doing that? You weren't even in the Army. Well, she said, my dad was in Vietnam. He was exposed to Agent Orange. They found out there was a connection between the guys exposed to Agent Orange and their kids being born with spina bifida. That's why she gets it.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be the vet. It could be a kid that has some horrible thing happen to him as the result. That was Agent Orange. You know, we've been hearing about the burn pits and those chemicals, and that's cancer to them. I guess that wouldn't be transferred down.
So in the disability realm, there are limited benefits that can be transferred to family members. The biggest one we're currently seeing is Camp Lejeune. You've all heard about it. You've all seen the ads for it on TV.
Yeah.
But there were family housing units in Camp Lejeune.
Mm-hmm.
So veterans had their wives and their kids on base drinking the contaminated water with them.
Right.
So we're seeing huge amounts of that. Now that the major lawsuit for that has closed, but there are still VA benefits available to family members for that. But other VA benefits, healthcare benefits, mortgages, employment benefits, educational benefits, those are available to family members. And I think that is an underutilized area. Not a lot of family members of veterans know that they can go to the VA and apply for compensation for their college tuition.
Oh, I didn't know that. So, you know all about this. I don't know. Before this, I think people had to go to the AMVETS or the VFW, and you had well-meaning lay people who didn't have specific training, but now there's lawyers.
Yes, and we still love American Legion. We love disabled American veterans. We love the VFW and the work that their employees do for veterans. The employees who do that are called VSOs, Veteran Service Officers. They are not attorneys. They do not take a percentage of your benefits, but that means they are taking on way more cases and not getting paid any extra, no matter how much or how little they are doing. They get swamped. They don't have the time, the legal expertise to handle the more complicated appeals. That's where we think the attorney's role really is. VSOs should be doing those initial applications. They should be helping with extremely basic appeals where the VA forgot to get medical records from a certain doctor or had trouble contacting an office. But when we get past that point, when we get to, did Agent Orange cause this particular type of kidney cancer? What other risk factors are there in this patient? That's when it's over the head of a VSO. That's when I would recommend you get an attorney involved. When it's a more complicated medical or legal question, and you want someone who's going to be able to dedicate time and effort to figuring that question out.
And like I've been saying, and this is true, the Quattrini Law Group is the only group of lawyers that I know that'll take it. So if I would Google, veterans benefits lawyers, there's only going to be one firm that comes up.
Yeah, you're going to see ads for other law firms that advertise doing veterans disability benefits.
Okay.
And when they get your phone call saying, I've got a VA disability issue, they're going to say, okay, let me take your information, and they're going to give it to me.
That's what I thought. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. We're the only group that does it. There's another singular attorney who does veterans benefits in the Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania area, but we're the only law firm with this big support group who are actively involved in veterans benefits.
I think I know him. Jason Mann, is it him? Because he used to do that, but I don't know if he still does it.
As far as I know, he doesn't. It's Persia Valley.
Okay, I don't know. But anyway, the Quattrini Law Group has now taken over my Uniontown and Somerset offices, along with me, because I'm part of the group. But also their central office is in Greensburg. They also have one in Pittsburgh, and their other major one is in Altoona. But for most people listening here, and this is one of the funny things, this radio show is very popular. And, people from Ligonier call me and, places like that. And so a lot of people are closer to Greensburg. Some might even be closer to Somerset. But now, there is this resource available. And even if you have gotten turned down in the past, if you're having a problem, and I've learned a lot myself this morning about all that's available, call up Erica. And I'll give you my 800 number. That'll get through. Yeah, let's just stick with that for now because they have their own phone numbers. But what happened with my phone numbers is they answer them now. So they've got to call me if I want to get a call. But, yeah, if you call the 800 number, 1-800-242-2412, if you are a vet, if you're a family member of the vet, there's just a lot of benefits, and there's a lot going on in this field. Historically, I think you could only charge $10. So years ago, nobody would take them because who the heck wants to do all that work and get $10?
No,
but when did that get knocked over?
Oh, that's been probably about 12 years now, I want to say. They changed that out. They started allowing attorneys in, but they didn't have a good route into it. Michael Quattrini, one of the owners of our law firm, was absolutely determined. Veterans are an area that needs legal help. They need people who are highly trained and highly specialized in this area to work with their doctors to help prove their conditions and get them in the door with the VA the way they need to. So when this was the hardest to get into was when he fought to get his accreditation with the VA. He fought to be recognized as a certified veterans attorney. So he's one of the first attorneys who actually started doing veterans benefits to this degree, where he's actually part of the VA system. He's accredited by the VA's attorney group, and he goes straight through the VA to work with you to get your benefits. I went through that process a few years after him when it was just a little bit easier. I'm still going to say it took a year and a half for me to get accredited by the VA and actually get access to their systems. It's not an easy process. It's not something that anybody can just jump into. But in talking about your law firm, we've seen it already. The veterans practice area plays into the other practice areas that you've done and the practice areas that we do perfectly. Because if you're applying for Social Security benefits or if you had a workers' comp injury, if you served in the military, chances are some part of that is caused by or was a worsening of a service-related injury. Or you're going to need to adjust something with your VA benefits because of it. The VA benefit is better than Social Security benefits. It's better than the workers' comp benefits because it doesn't care about any other income. Unless you're getting unemployability, then it only cares about working income. But that still doesn't care if you win the lottery. So it's an easier benefit to maintain than SSDI or SSI or workers' comp.
That's interesting because when you're talking about, for example, Social Security disability versus workers' compensation, there's a rule called the 80% rule, that you can't get more than 80% of your benefits between workers' comp and Social Security disability if you look at your 5 best years of earnings. But VA benefits aren't affected by that at all.
No, the only interplay between VA benefits and any other legal benefit is between VA benefits and SSI. For anyone who's not familiar with SSI, it is a completely resource-based program. If you have any other income, if it's not from working, your benefit is reduced dollar for dollar by that income. If it's from working, it's a little bit less reduction. There, if you're receiving VA benefits, your SSI will be reduced.
That's right, and we've talked about that a lot. Social Security disability you will receive if you're disabled because you earned it, and SSI, if you didn't work a day in your life, you can still get SSI if you're disabled. Because you're not getting it because you earned it, it is taken away dollar for dollar for any kind of income. Or, I had a funny one the other day. I had a lady from Savannah, Georgia, and we applied for Social Security or SSI down there for her. And then she moves up here, and for some reason they didn't even notify us that she was found to be disabled for about a year. And then they tell us she is disabled. I said, well, where's her money? And they said, well, she owns a house down in Savannah, and she was allowed to get it while she was living in the house, but then she moved out of the house, and you can't own property that you don't live in if you're on SSI. So there's all those tricks about SSI. So I understand what you're talking about.
Tons of tricks to that, but that's the only situation where veterans benefits will cause an issue. Veterans benefits don't care about workers' comp, and workers' comp doesn't care about them. SSDI, they do not care about each other.
Right,
they work perfectly together.
Right. SSD, it doesn't matter what your, except workers' comp, but it doesn't matter what your other income is. Although, unlike VA, you can't work full time while you're on SSD. I think right now it's $1,570 a month you're allowed to make.
Right. The hard cutoff, the on-off switch is at I think it's $1,650 now.
Oh yeah,
$1,650.
it always goes up a little bit.
Thankfully.
So you can work, as listeners to this program know, you can work on SSD, but there is a limit. And if you go $1 over that limit, but if you stay under that limit, you're okay. But again, with VA, once you're found to be 100% disabled, you get that check, even if you're working full time. And are these benefits ever taken away? Do they say, well, you got better, you're not disabled anymore?
They can be, but there are different levels of permanency to VA benefits. The default is that they're not permanent. They will be reviewed every 5 years, which just means they're going to schedule you for an examination to check on what your current symptom level is. Now, the way the VA is looking at those symptom levels, Congress wrote, if you have X symptom, or let's say your back is limited to only 20 degrees of range of motion, you qualify for this percentage. So it's very cut and dry laid out. If those symptoms change at that examination, if your symptoms are worse, you'll get an increase. If they're better, you'll get a decrease. There are static disabilities where an individual condition will be permanently rated that. Unless you yourself ask the VA to change it, they will never initiate a review of a static condition. There's also what's called permanent and total. So if you get 100% rating and the doctor who looks at you for the VA says, I don't think this is ever going to get better for you, or not substantially better, they can recommend a permanent 100% rating. It is only for 100% because it's total. But what it means is you are locked into that maximum benefit rate that qualifies you for the top priority level of care through the VA medical system, that gives you the priority filing for VA mortgages, all of that permanently, until and unless you tell the VA that you don't need it anymore. Let me just give you a small hint now. Don't do that.
Well, who on God's earth would do that? I mean, honestly, I imagine it's a pretty small percentage who hold up their hand and said, well, I'm just feeling great today, so would you please take all my money away? So I want to get into a little bit more of the procedures. We're talking about, vets. And by the way, some of the examples you were given were combat, but it doesn't have to be combat.
No.
It can be any old thing that happened. You could have got hit by a truck down in, in basic training or something.
Well, a good example would be I have tons and tons of foot injuries from basic training. You're out doing rucks in the woods, you cut your foot on a log, you end up with an infection, you have a permanent foot injury. That is absolutely a VA-related disability.
Is this, and I don't know this one either, is this extended, let's say you're in the Army Reserves and they've got you out for a month in the desert. And as I remember, I had another client that he had hard contact lenses. This sounds stupid, but it wasn't stupid for him. He goes out in the desert for a month with the hard contact lenses, and he didn't have his glasses, so he keeps them in, and he got a serious eye issue out of the thing. But he was in the reserves. Would he be entitled to disability in a situation like that?
The primary rule for reservists or National Guard is if you are operating on federal orders. If it is the federal government that is paying your salary to go and do that. Now, if you're a National Guard member, you can also be on state orders. If you're a reservist, you can be non-active. There are a lot of different situations. So it depends on exactly who you're working for in the moment that it happens.
So you need that's interesting. That's a kind of a strange little
It is.
twist. But I mean, honestly, that's why you need a lawyer to figure this one out.
Right, because the VSOs don't have time to go into your file and pore over your dates of activation based on who was paying you. That's something that an attorney has the time to do because we're getting paid to do it.
Yeah, and God knows, I think a lot of people might not know whether they're on a federal order or a state order during certain things.
The majority don't. Now, if you're at Fort Bragg, you're on federal orders.
Right.
But if you're out in the woods in Pennsylvania for your National Guard training, we actually have to look at that. You may or may not be activated on federal orders at that point.
So let's say that, there's been a lot of flooding, and I think once in a while they'll pull the National Guard into that kind of thing. Is that generally a federal order or a state order?
That's generally a state order. So let's say Shapiro activates the National Guard to help with the flooding in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's a state order. FEMA activates the National Guard. That's a federal order.
That's funny. I mean, these are pretty narrow differences.
Yes, and it's so situational at that point. It's just, I need to know the individual and what's going on there to figure it out.
So let's say that somebody who's a vet believes they've got some related disability. They apply with the AMVETS or the VFW. They get turned down. You take it. Are there ever hearings on these kinds of things?
Yes, one of the appeals options. There are 3 appeals options. We can add evidence, we can ask for a more experienced employee, or we can ask for a hearing with the judge. We try to avoid hearings with judges.
Now, TJ's
it's
telling
a long
me
time.
that they're about to play the national anthem. This has been Joe Fieschko with Erica Dowd. Erica's been talking about VA. If you're a vet and you think you're disabled, call us at 800-242-2412. Erica will fully inform you of your benefits.
Massive manhunt resulted in his arrest.
Our law enforcement partners are building a case using